So welcome everyone. My name is Asma Khalil. I'm a professor of fetal medicine. I lead the twin service here at St. George's. I also the director of the fetal medicine unit in Liverpool and the founder really for the Twin Trust Center for Research and Clinical Excellence, which is funded by the Twin Trust and is hosted at St. George's Hospital. It's my pleasure to meet you today and thank you for joining this event. And this event is really focusing on raising awareness of TAPS, of twin anemia polycythemia sequence. Today is the second International TAPS Day, and therefore we celebrate really the fact that this condition was first described roughly about 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago, by a Dutch neonatologist, Professor Nichola, who actually was joined us on an earlier webinar that was mainly targeting the healthcare professionals. And again, we're improving awareness of how you diagnose it, how you monitor for this condition, how you manage it. It's my real pleasure to introduce two fantastic people. I've come to know them over the last few years. First is Nichola, who is a mom of twin who had TAPS, and she very courageous really to share her story and to publish a book, a very special book on TAPS, identical twins, and COVID. Today was the launch of this book. I would highly recommend you reading it, and I'm going to put a link to how to buy it on Amazon in the chat function. The other person that's my pleasure to introduce is Stephanie Ernest, and I'm going to get them really to introduce themselves in a second. So Stephanie Ernest was also a mom who had a identical twin, and had TAPS, and she is the founder of the TAPS Support Foundation. And again, I'll be very interested for you to share your story, the passion, what was the idea behind so, sort of the initiative of actually setting up the TAPS Support Foundation. And the other thing is that also we have Bess Duffel from the Twins Trust. And thank you so much, Bess, for joining. Twins Trust is the UK charity for twin and multi-pregnancy. They're doing fantastic work in terms of supporting the parents of twins and multiples, and actually supporting healthcare professionals. And as I mentioned earlier, they funded and really were crucial in setting up the first Twin Trust Center for Research and Clinical Excellence. And that's mainly really to support shared learning, improving the outcomes, improving the experience of parents of twins and multi-pregnancy, and also the education of healthcare professionals and also the research. So thank you, Bess, for joining us.
Thank you.
This event is recorded, and we will make the recording available on the Twin Trust website, but also on the TAPS Support Foundation website, and also through various social medias. So again, what our objective from today is to raise awareness, because certainly from my experience, I would say more than 90% of parents of twins or triplets never heard of TAPS until actually they have the diagnosis or they have the problem. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to hand over to Nichola to introduce herself and to talk to us about her story.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Asma. Thank you so much. So my name's Nichola. My twin boys were diagnosed exactly 2 years ago today, so the 3rd of March 2020, which strangely I didn't actually realise until yesterday. They were diagnosed. They were 25 weeks in utero, and they were already stage 3. So Asha was going into cardiac failure. Obviously, at the time, being told that you are diagnosed with something which isn't curable, there's at that point there are treatments, but there's only hope, really. The fact that something will work, as a parent, it's absolutely horrendous. And as you can imagine, we went through all kinds of emotions. However, we were at St. George's, we were introduced to asthma, we were put in very safe hands, and you instantly felt very calming and safe. And we were given the options. And as a parent, as a mum, you just, you have to fight. So we went for the laser surgery. I don't think the odds were particularly in our favour, but if we didn't do it, I would definitely lose one, if not both babies. And the laser surgery was successful, and Asma and her team saved my baby's lives. We then went through the journey of having to go back for checkups, and then unfortunately my waters broke at 28 plus 3, so I was airlifted to Southampton. The one bonus of that, after seeing the fetal medicine, is at 28 plus 3, my MCA Dopplers for the first time. And the MCA Dopplers are what's used to measure for TAPS. For the first time were normal, which was miraculous in itself as well. I then went on to deliver the babies at 29 plus 5, Leo weighing £1.15, Asher £2.10, so tiny little tots. And then I went through my neonatal journey, which was a whole other experience for 7.5 weeks. I also did this during COVID and the beginning of COVID. So I was alone for a lot of the time. I was separated from my then 2-year-old son, which was probably the most heartbreaking, because if you have had children once before, I was obviously pregnant with the twins, but Sebi I'd had for 2 years and he was my everything. So to suddenly think I won't have him for 12 weeks was horrendous. So it all added to our story. So one of the reasons I decided to write the book, exactly a year ago, Asma got in contact with me and asked if I would help, be that, you know, help to raise awareness. And of course I said, yes, I've got, you know, 1-year-old corrected 9-month twins, that's fine. I've got a 3-year-old, I can do this too, as you do, super mum. No. But I couldn't not help. And I'd actually already started writing the book, because people had said to me, you know, you really ought to write that down, because you actually couldn't write it, you know, and actually you can, so you need to write it, because you wouldn't, you know, it's like a film script. So I thought, well, I'll go and start writing it for friends and family and see what happens. And obviously after speaking with Asma, I began to realise even more so how important raising awareness was, and that actually I'd already known, backtracking slightly, when I had my diagnosis, at that point there were no stories of hope. So, and actually TAPS, typically, Stephanie, you didn't start till the August. I was diagnosed in the March. So obviously at that point you pop in TAPS and the only thing that comes up is statistics, research papers, no hope whatsoever, a lot of twin loss. So I had nothing to grab hold of, which was horrendous. And I remember saying to Pete at the time, who's my husband, if we get through, I really want to be that beacon of light. I want to be that story of hope, because I can't let someone else go through what we're going through. You know, I need that one story just so you can hold on to it, because when you've got something like this, hope is all you have. You know, you have no definites. So if you don't have a light, it would be very easily to just shrivel up, you know, so you have to have something to hold on to. Anyway, so then working with Asma, Stephanie, I met Stephanie. I started to know a lot more regarding, you know, TAPS, finding out that it's not routinely screened for, finding out that because of this, we don't actually know the outcomes. We don't actually know how many babies are actually dying from it, how many babies are not being diagnosed, how many babies are being left with long-term outcomes. As a TAPS mum myself, my babies both have long-term issues. They're obviously very very little. So you've got a bit of both going on, but they're both behind with their gross motor skills, which is their walking, and, you know, walking, just kind of maneuverability. They're 23 months, 20 months corrected. I don't know if that's basically to do with adjusting of ages. That's a whole other story, but they're not walking yet. So Leo is just starting. Asher is having to have weekly physio. So he has a left-sided weakness, which is again probably due to being severely anemic. So he has had some white cell damage on the right-hand side of his brain. So as a parent, I wanted to write this book, again, this book that suddenly is becoming such a bigger thing, not only to be that story of hope for other parents, to have something for them to be able to grab hold of and read, to know they're not alone, to stop being afraid. They don't need to be afraid, because actually within fetal medicine, in neonatal, it's not talked about a lot. And I find that I think people don't like to talk about poorly or dying babies. You know, why would we? It's horrendous, but actually it does need to be talked about. And I think within the book, it's not just sad, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of fun, hilarity. I mean, the fetal team are the funniest people I've ever met, and so caring, and the jokes in neonatal are hilarious. Only people that are going through it, you can tell those jokes, anyone else would be offended. But when you're in it, it's very different. And I wanted to highlight this. I mean, especially with neonatal as well, the amount of multiples that go through neonatal is very, very high. And so the book is basically the entire journey. It's everything. And then at the back of the book, I've also wanted to, again, I work with Asma on this. It's very much about giving parents facts and terms, giving them something to, in layman's terms, know what's going on, know what things mean. So I've kind of put a whole story and then a bit of an encyclopedia together. I've got it here. My new baby number 4. So I just hope it makes a difference. And obviously, as on top of that, I hope it raises some money. So to be able to give back. So again, research. Without research, we can't further. We don't know the outcomes. We don't know the definitive cure. And it's very, very important. But we need money for research. We need data for research. And it's kind of all swings and roundabouts. So again, I thought, well, if I could write this book and if I could make $1 million, if I could make all this money, then hopefully, in my dreams, then I could put it towards good. And so at the moment, large profits of the book will be going towards different TAPS projects, TAPS research. And the first beneficiaries will be the Twins Trust and the Twins Trust Centre for Research and Clinical Excellence, because they saved my boys, and Asma saved my boys. And without them, well, I wouldn't have them. So thank you to you both here at the moment. And before I waffle anymore, Asma, do you want to ask any more definite questions?
Well, I mean, it's lovely to hear your story, and despite the fact that I lived your story with you, even just listening to you makes my eyes, just bring tears to my eyes. So no, it's Joe Lawrence saying no waffle at all. People are enjoying listening to you, Nichola.
Oh, thank you.
So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask Stephanie to introduce herself and just tell us about her story and sort of, the what makes you set up the TAPS Support Foundation.
Of course. And Nichola, I do just want to start out by saying you did forget a very important anniversary today, and it is the anniversary of when we first met a year ago.
Yes.
And a couple of Twitter messages became swapping phone numbers, and it turned into hour-long phone calls. And so through TAPS, I've made an incredible friend. And I think that's the first thing I want to say is that not every TAPS story has a terrible ending. There are always connections to be made. And small plug for International TAPS Day, that is out there making connections. My story is when I was reading Nichola's book, because I was fortunate to pre-read a copy of it, I think I was sending her messages about every 10 minutes going, oh my God, me too, because there were just so many emotions in there that really correlated to my experience. And my story is very different because my girls are 8 years old. And something Professor Khalil just said as well is that not many parents have heard of TAPS outside of getting a diagnosis. And for me, that was absolutely true. I had no clue. I was going to my appointments in the Netherlands every 2 weeks. And the first I heard of any dramas was I was diagnosed with stage 1 TTTS at 24 weeks. And I panicked. My team in my hometown were very good, and they sent me through to Leiden. And that was where I learned about TAPS. And my girls were born at 31 weeks with stage 3 TAPS, spontaneous TAPS. We had our TTTS resolved. We were one of those very rare unicorn cases. But yeah, and my connection to Leiden and to founding the foundation is actually the care that I received, because again, a fantastic team with Professor Lapriore, of course, he was the neonatologist on my case. I had wonderful care. They screened me for TAPS, and I still had no idea what this was all about. And for 2 years after my girls were born, I came away and I was in a fog, and everywhere I went, I was told that they just had TTS, and I blindly absorbed all this. I went to all my routine appointments, and I connected with the Leiden team regularly just to talk about my girls, because there was nothing, like Nichola said. And so I would just ask them questions, because one of the things they do is they give you an email address and you can email them with questions. And it started going to twin groups online and finding there was no information, and a lot of bad information and not great information. And that was really where I started, was like started going to these groups and going, well, actually, and then my well actually turned into writing a blog, it turned into writing a website. And then I kind of got to a point where I was like, you know something, I think I need to go further. So my well actually became, I started a foundation, and we launched in August in 2020. And from there, I sort of said laughingly to Professor Lopriori, who is our patron, oh, nothing's going to happen for at least 2 years. It's going to be very quiet. And we launched on the 18th of August 2020, and since then the snowball, the avalanche hasn't stopped. It's just been full on. We've been really active, busy, working, and our aim is to raise money for research. So that's one of our big things, raise awareness of TAPS and try to break down barriers of communication and find people who can actually connect people to each other, connect people to researchers, to doctors, and make those connections. And that's really what we all do. We have 5 pillars that we work under. And for us, that's it. It's just really about strengthening connections between researchers and patients and making sure everyone has good quality information. That's me.
Okay. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's very inspiring actually to hear both of your stories. That, you know, being pregnant with identical twins, what we call high risk pregnancy, and you develop these problems, you go through fetal therapy, lots of uncertainties, and that drives you to do something above and beyond what most people would do, which is often you have babies, you're very busy, and often you get, you know, you have a lot of challenges, is it? People are busy, people don't have time, you know, is that, you know, TAPS is an important condition, but we have so many pathologies, there's so many important diseases and conditions. So what makes you unique? What makes you the people who you are, who actually, as I said, did something above and beyond what most people do? I'm going to start with Nichola. What drives you?
Do you know what? It's seeing the stories. Every time I see a story of another baby that's been lost, or I see pictures of other families where one of the babies neurodevelopmentally, you know, severe cerebral palsy, or it just gets me. I mean, literally every parent, I feel it, and I feel it so deeply. And then I see my boys, and I see my beautiful boys who are still struggling, but they've got so much grit and determination. And I want that for every parent. I want to fight for all those children who have got no one else to fight for them. And I want every parent to have the opportunity to have their 2 boys, girls in front of them, you know, playing. And even if they are struggling, I want them to have that. And I just can't not. And it's so strange, because I have to say, the last 2 years, anyone that's had twins will know it's so hard. And then having twins and then having a now 4-year-old as well is incredibly hard. And then I haven't said to many people, but my husband also has had a breakdown. So I've had all of that all at the same time. And for some reason, I was like, why can't I just stop? But there's just something that just drives me. And I do think it's that. I can't not. I cannot see babies dying. And I think from nearly losing my own babies, the thought of that happening to other people unnecessarily. And, you know, and that will bring us back to when we talk about routine screening. And the thought that is just not done is just horrendous to me. So that's why, really.
Oh, thank you so much, Nichola. And I know that you feel passionate about monitoring and why it's not something implemented in routine practice. And Stephanie, I'd like to hear from you. What drives you to do what you're doing?
Can't hear her.
That's better. Sorry, my children were making noise in the background, so I put it to, they're still awake. I think really what it was for me, for all the reasons Nichola said, don't need to reverse this, but also the fact that I had amazing care. I had a standard of care that was above and beyond what a lot of people get. And I'm not a special person. I'm very much a stay-at-home. I was at that point in time very much a stay-at-home mom. I was an expat in a country where I don't speak the language. I live in the Netherlands. Don't let my Australian accent fool you. I have a passport, Dutch passport as well. But I lived in a country where I didn't really speak the language, and I felt so lonely. And so for me, it was really connecting to get connections and see who I could meet that had the same experience. Because when you meet another TAPS parent, it's really an oh my God moment. It's because you are so rare and so unique. And I think that's really what drove me, was just making sure that I could meet other people, and on top of that, having such a high standard of care and not being anyone terribly important in the, just a regular person, but having basically a rock star kind of treatment, and knowing that other people don't get that treatment just really inspired me to make sure that we get that standard of care, and to really push that. That was really all it was.
Can I add, Asma? Can I add?
Yes,
something?
please, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, just Stephanie saying that's exactly the same thing. I mean, I had a rock star, and the thing is, if I hadn't had the size difference in the babies, if they hadn't had that 29% size difference, and so I was sent, because I come from an island, who doesn't know, I come from the Isle of Wight, and our healthcare here is great, but no fetal medicine, obviously, and if there's any issues with size difference, then we're sent to Southampton. And then because Southampton monitored me, it was because of them, they checked my MCA Dopplers at 24 weeks when I already, at 25 then had advanced TAPS. I was just lucky, and like Stephanie said, other people deserve to be lucky. I had the rock stars, but if I hadn't had that size difference, I would have lost both the twins. And the stories I'm now hearing that, in other places around the UK that don't have that kind of treatment, because with TAPS, the donor doesn't have to be smaller. My donor was bigger. They don't even have to have a size difference, as we know. So the chance that they don't necessarily get checked is quite high. And again, why do we need to just be the lucky ones? I think everyone deserves to be lucky.
And I think that's exactly it. And if anyone asks me to describe my story in 2 words, I always say dumb luck. It's honestly, that's it. I had no clue. I had a great team in my local hospital who were checking for twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. It was just by chance that one day where I didn't have my regular OB, I had another OB do my scan and do my assessment. And she said to me, you know what, normally when you get diagnosed, we send you to Amsterdam. But she said, I'm going to bypass protocol, and I've already called Leiden, and they're expecting you. So get down there as fast as you can. And to this day, I call her my guardian angel, because she did everything right. I blindly believed everything else I was told. And so that's it. It was dumb luck.
It's the same. I had Dr. Raji Parasulman, who works down at Southampton, and she was literally on the phone to Asma, the fetal medicine, the same day. She was on the phone to them saying, look, this is happening. Again, I thank her too, because again, without that, there would be nothing. And actually, do you know what? It's not the people on the Isle of Wight's fault. I realise that, it's not the obstetricians, the sonographers. They don't know. They're not taught. So if you're not taught, you can't blame them. But what we can do is try and change the teaching.
Yeah. So Nichola, something that you're really so passionate about is the fact that you didn't know about this condition until you had the diagnosis, and the fact that this condition is not routinely monitored for. Or do you want maybe to sort of share your your concern about that, any efforts? What if you have the health minister on the webinar with us, what would be your wish?
Well, my wish would be, really, there is no, one of the things I heard, which I think is a little bit crazy, is one of the reasons they didn't want to routinely check is because they were worried about frightening the parents. Now, as a parent who's had, 3 children now, why would it frighten me? When you go into any pregnancy, you have tests right at the beginning, and because they are part of routine, as a parent, you're not frightened. You just, that's what we have. We have scans, we have tests. That's what we do, to try and protect our children. Now they're telling us that they won't frighten us. I'm sorry, but I would rather be frightened than lose my children. And actually, providing you have the right knowledge out there and you actually give me a pamphlet or you let me talk to somebody who knows about it, I won't be frightened because there's options and there's knowledge. Fear comes from not knowing, So I would say, as you check for 20 twin, you should be checking from even as early as 12 weeks, but certainly from 16 weeks. You should be checking the MCA Dopplers, because the other thing is we don't know is how quickly it deteriorates. As we know with my boys, they deteriorated incredibly quickly. And unless you are checked, weekly, 2 weekly, unless you are checked, they won't know. So I think I would just plead with him, why don't we as parents have this chance to save our parents, sorry, save our twins. I've had parents around all day looking after the kids, to save our children. Why don't we get this chance? Because there's no reason. It's a simple test. It's a cheap test. We're not asking for expensive medicines. So I'd say give us the chance, give us the option, give these children a chance to live. And also, give us a chance to get the data that we need to be able to understand the disease, to be able to understand how many children are actually getting this, to be able to then do the further research to understand the long-term repercussions.
Yeah. I couldn't actually agree more. That's just one of my favorite pet rants there, is that if we don't screen for something because we don't know enough about it, how are we going to find out more about it? It's a paradox. It's a crazy paradox. So absolutely, 100%. Well said.
Just to share with you sort of that, the guideline from NICE. So for people who are not from the United Kingdom, NICE is an organization in the UK where they review evidence and they produce guidelines, often sort of supported by robust evidence as much as possible. And NICE published an update on the guideline of the twin and multi-pregnancy in September 2019. And in fact, we had this discussion about awareness. Is it some people, and people have different views. And we have just to maybe mention that we are obviously biased group, but certain people said, well, we don't want to frighten people. I mean, exactly what you said, but actually the final version of the guideline did recommend that we should inform the parents who have monochoric twins or identical twins or sharing one placenta of this condition. What is TAPS, twin anemia polycystic sequence? What does it mean? Is the difference in hemoglobin concentration? What is hemoglobin? Is the red stuff in your blood? What is sort of the, what is significance of it? Is it something, important? Could it lead to harm to the babies or not? So actually awareness, I think there is to some extent a consensus that we should raise awareness. In reality, certainly my observation is probably, as you mentioned, as we discussed earlier, the majority of people don't know about it until it actually happened or diagnosed. A second point about monitoring. And again, just to share with you sort of the guideline update from NICE, is the fact that they have not recommended routine monitoring for all monochoric twin pregnancies, but for the ones that have complication. So the one that had TGS and had laser treatment, if there is size discordance, so your condition would fit into that. If there is sort of abnormal, like increased fluid in one baby, or signs of blood flow Doppler abnormalities. So there is a list. I mean, I guess what Nikki and Stephanie want is to go beyond that and actually to recommend monitoring for everybody, because certainly a significant proportion of TAPs occur in pregnancies that don't necessarily have any of these problems or complication. And the guidelines do vary. So certainly there are some international guidelines that do recommend routine monitoring for early stage in pregnancy. So, I think Americans, again, they don't recommend routine monitoring for uncomplicated twins. I'm not sure the Dutch, I suspect they do recommend or not.
From 14 weeks.
Fantastic.
It is recommended, however, it's a guideline.
Okay, so it doesn't, I mean, it's recommended, but does not necessarily mean it happens 100%.
No, that's right.
And also asthma. Asthma, of course, it can be recommended, but if the sonographers aren't taught how to test for it, or the right at the beginning, your midwives don't have the knowledge, even if it's recommended, if they're not taught, they won't know to do it, will they?
Yeah.
It's true. And one of the big concerns actually is with introducing routine screening, and this is just feedback we have as a foundation, is that it often depends on not only a willingness to do it and a willingness to update guidelines, but also the fact that there is a lack of training. There is also, it's also kind of, there's a lack of infrastructure. Some centers do not have the facilities to do this. And I can point to an example recently where in Australia, there was a regional center that we actually helped them fundraise, but they wanted to put a fetal medicine unit, fetal ultrasound unit in for NCA Dopplers and things like that. And they actually did get enough money, which was fabulous. But one of the big parts of it was actually also covering the cost of training their staff to use it. So this is one of the biggest problems, is not only a lack of awareness, but also lack of equipment and a lack of knowledge.
Yes, and I mean, it's a shame that we don't have a sonographer on the webinar with us, because it is true that not all sonographers would be happy or competent to do the MCA Dopplers at a very early stage in pregnancy. So certainly, I think there is a need for training and so raising awareness even among healthcare professionals. Okay, I'm going to move on to another important point that I personally feel very passionate about, is the follow-up of the babies, the long-term follow-up of the babies. And maybe I'm going to start with Stephanie this time and tell me, because you live in the Netherlands, which I think they have a fantastic system for follow-up twins. So tell me what you had was an offer. And then Stephanie, Nichola, or Nikki, would actually share her experience as well.
Okay, well, I actually have two experiences. One is within Leiden, one outside of Leiden. Within Leiden, it's fantastic. We have regular scheduled developmental checkups and also long-term checkups. However, we get our motor skills, cognitive skills tested. We get a very extensive report. One of the biggest problems though is that we get this wonderful report which outlines everything. It's everything from intelligence testing through to there's Bailey scores, Wechsler scores, all these kind of things are done within Leiden. But once we step outside of Leiden, we have a very big problem with our local teams are not qualified to read these reports. And so we still get some follow-ups missed, but one of the biggest things is that our twins are checked. If they are born in the fetal therapy unit in Leiden, they're checked from, I think, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, and 8 years. My girls are due for their checkup, their final checkup. They'll graduate this year. We still have had very big issues with getting proper follow-ups outside of Leiden in relation to getting hearing testing was a big problem, and also getting it acknowledged as TAPS and not being told, calm down, mummy, it's just TTS, it's over with, they're out now. But yeah, there is the Leiden system is very good, it's very comprehensive, and it does check for things, but one of the big flaws we have is this beautiful detailed report that no one outside of there can read.
Great, thank you so much. What about Nikki?
Well, I kind of have it the other way, unfortunately. So obviously once we left fetal medicine and actually as soon as the babies were born in neonatal, it was put down as twin to twin. So immediately in my journey, even in the neonatal in Southampton, which is a big unit, and they're a wonderful, wonderful unit, but there's me having to explain from a very early start, when I didn't know a lot, that no, actually my baby's had TAPS. It's not the same. I know it's not the same. And actually that's unfortunately become a bit of a pattern. In an amazing way, my paediatrician listens to me. He probably thinks I'm potty, but he listens to me. You know, my physio listens to me, my OT listens to me. I've been very lucky. I've pushed. I mean, they've seen the babies have delays, so you know they had to do something about it. If they hadn't had delays, would they be testing them still? No, they'd be checking because they're premature. They'd have their regular checkups for that, but no, they wouldn't be. I've had to get my paediatrician to change on my notes that it was TAPS. I had the health visitor come the other day and she'd put it down as twin to twin. I had to say, no, it's a complete, again, I have to go through the story. The physios are amazing. They've been following the story now. And, you know, I've had to take the book in and I've taken this in and I take articles in, because otherwise, you know, this is me. You have to believe me. It's like, oh, goodness. But no, obviously I'm educating, and I'm lucky that these people, you know, they believe me because I'm working with people like yourself, Asma, Stephanie. They have to believe me, you know, because I can back it up, you know. But the point is I shouldn't really have to do that. You know, as a parent, I should be supported. And again, I'm lucky I'm in the system now. So, I mean, all I could say to any other parent like myself is you just have to push. You actually do. You have to ask. And then you can't be afraid to say, hang on, no, I had TAPS. You know, this is what TAPS is. And again, I think, plug again, you know, with the book, that's what I wanted to give the parents, that power as well, to give them a little handbook, you know, that they can actually go, well, hang on, let me just find that. Yeah, I think you're fine, you know, and be able to, you know, share it with someone else. Because again, unless guidelines change, there is no follow-up in the UK. There's no follow-up for TAPS definitively. And there should be. We should be being checked, you know, at 1, at 2, at 4. What's going to happen to my boys? You know, are they going to have other neurological disorders? We don't know, do we? With the hearing, I went for my hearing screening. This is a recent story. I went for my ANSD ABR hearing screening, to turn up to be told that they weren't doing ABR because the boys were of an age where they'd had to sedate them and they didn't want to put them through it. I was like, okay, well, you realise we've had TAPS again. I go into the story and she explained that in neonatal we might have actually had a sort of ABR, so they think they're okay. And actually, you know, they did the normal hearing test on them, which actually is showing that potentially they have enough for speech, which is great, and they are going to keep monitoring them, which is wonderful. But again, it's a bit of a battle, you know. And again, nothing against any of the health practitioners that are helping me. They're all being amazing. They just don't know. They just didn't know.
Yeah. No. And I've just had another, oh my God, me too moment, Nichola. So for those who aren't aware, my daughters are, if you've seen a picture of TAPS twins online, those are my daughters. And that's their birth picture. And I've actually been in appointments where they've gone to me, you know, it's nothing to worry about, they're born now. And in many of the papers that I take into the appointments, there's actually pictures of my girls in them. And they go, no, this is them. Okay, this is you. So I have to actually show them the paper and point and say, this is my children. Yeah, these are them. You know, so totally my Me Too moment. I face similar hurdles, probably not as intensively because again, at least we have some recognition, and within the Netherlands we can connect our local team to Leiden, but it is still very much one of those things that people are saying, oh, it's just twin to twin transfusion syndrome. And it's not. TAPS is a different disease. It does have different long-term outcomes. And please don't call it a form of twin to twin transfusion syndrome, because it's not.
So I really agree with you about the need for long-term outcome or follow-up of these babies. And I just put it in the chat function, the link to editorial that I had the pleasure to write with Nichola who described TABS, and Keith Sweet, who used to be the chief executive of the Twin Trust, and Rosie Townsend, who is my fellow, so extremely hardworking young doctor who I'm sure should be a fantastic consultant, who did a huge amount of research on twins. And this really what we wanted is to call to action for long-term development, follow-up of monogrammed twins or the one that share one placenta. So now really hope anybody on the webinar who can actually help us, particularly obviously Twin Trust, TABS Support Foundation, and Nikki with amazing effort to actually to support us to lobby for actually having a service where these babies are followed up. And therefore, if there's any problems with development, any minor delays detected early, and when it's detected early, there is a time where you actually can put measures in place to improve the outcomes, rather than leaving it too late. If there's a problem with the hearing, the baby's not hearing properly. And if you identify it early, the treatment, and therefore the development of the baby is not impaired. But if you wait until already the development is impaired to discover that the baby have hearing impairment, I think you missed the boat or you left it too late.
Yeah, it's the same with stage 1. I'll call it cerebral palsy because that's the easier name for it, but it's the same with that. Asher is kind of being stopped as well. We're not allowed to let him walk because they have such a small bracket of time where they suddenly will start to want to walk. And obviously if he walks now before his core strength is strong enough, he won't be able to walk correctly. And again, if we weren't being monitored for that, that wouldn't have been picked up, and we would have a child who probably can't even sit up still. So,
and if I could just say, that is one of my favorite papers, that long-term course, that is actually in my pile. I was looking for my folder. I have a folder of papers that I carry with me to new appointments and new doctors, and it's literally a guide to TABS, and that paper is in my pile. So.
I mean, I think one thing which I think, again, people like the TABS Support Foundation, like Twin Trust and Nichola's book, which is amazing, is a measure to maybe translate scientific papers, which are often written in a very scientific language with medical jargon and not really accessible to the normal people, and actually be able to translate that into a way that's really simple message. There's nothing stronger than human story to engage people. So I'm conscious of the time, and I want to make sure that people have the opportunity to ask questions or engage in this discussion. But before that, if I want to say call to action, apart from actually buy the book, because I think that is really, really nice. And I put the link to Amazon in the chat box. Call to action. So if you have one ask Nichola, what will be your one ask? And Stephanie, what will be your one ask?
Steph, do you want to go first, or?
But you can go first if you want.
Yes,
if
you're the author of the book.
No, you.
Okay. Well, I'll go quickly because mine is: please stop calling TABS a form of TTTS. Please call it twin anemia polycythemia sequence. It is a different disease. It has an author code. It's 617294. Not that I know it by heart. Please stop calling TABS a form of TTTS. Learn as much as you can. Contact us. Contact ASMA. Contact Twins Trust. Read Nichola's book. TABS has different long-term outcomes. It has different diagnostic criteria. It's different treatment options. There is so much different about TABS. Please don't call it TTS. Nichola, it's all yours.
Yeah, I think everything you've just said, let's talk about TABS. We need to talk about it. We need to have routine screening. We need parents to not be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid. If you're having identical twins, do not be afraid to ask. They are your children. You have the power.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you both. And I agree, particularly with Stephanie. I mean, I've seen many, many cases where everything was called TTS. Even difference in the size of the babies were called TTS. Just because it's what people knew and they didn't know anything else. So certainly, as I mentioned, there is need for improving awareness, not just among the parents, but also among healthcare professionals. And I hope that with all the efforts that we do, the webinars that we do, the work with the Twin Trust, to actually be able to have the opportunity to improve awareness and make sure that people can label things using the right terminology.
Those correct labels will help insurances. They will help parents get better treatment. There is so much more to getting that correct label. As Nichola said, it will make a smoother pathway.
Yeah. And just maybe, I mean, obviously not to this audience, but actually to call for more research studies, because compared to TTS, the fraction of research studies on TAPS is minor. It's really very, very, very small. And it's true that's, it's much younger. Condition is, hasn't been sort of around or known for many, many years like TTS, but certainly unless we call for more studies, encourage the researchers to do the studies that we need to provide evidence. Unfortunately, we get 5 years down the line, we're still left with the same situation. I'm just gonna sort of see if there's any questions from people on the webinar or the event. I'm conscious. I mean, I would encourage you to use the chat box rather than actually unmute yourself, because certainly from my experience, sometimes you end up by having background noise, the kids, the television, your partner, which often interfere with the speaker. So please, if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you, and use the chat function. While you are gathering your thoughts and writing something in the chat, I'm just gonna again ask Nikki to talk about the book, how to buy the book, and anything else that you want to mention, because it's your day today. You're launching the book on the TAPS Awareness Day, the second International TAPS Day.
I'd just like to say thank you, Asma. Thank you so much for all your support. I mean, you have been amazing, and Stephanie, the support, I don't think without either of you I would have continued. I would definitely have given up. So just having that support and those encouragement really helps. And to you, Beth, as well, you have been you have been there, and that has made a big difference to me, so thank you. You can buy the book on Amazon. If you put in Identical Twins, Nichola Luth, it all comes up, which is wonderful. So it's $8.99, available on paperback and ebook. I think Asma's going to pop the links below. You can also buy it on www.tapstwins.co.uk, which is my website. And you can follow me at Taps Twins on Insta and on Facebook. So the book's available there as well. I'm going to be doing some other chats. Actually, Jo, who's on there today, I'm going to be chatting with her on Saturday. Hello, thank you, Jo. And I am going to be chatting with Stephanie again next Thursday. We've got some more newspaper coverage, potentially the Nationals on Saturday. So we're just fingers crossed doing everything we can to raise awareness and kind of obviously publicise. For me, the other thing I want to do with the book is I'm going to start hopefully sending it to hospitals, because I want to be able to have that every neonatal, every fetal unit has a copy. They don't have to buy one, I want to give them. That wants to be part of what we can do with the money, just so that it's there for any parent, again, or any staff that might need it. And so, yeah, that's it really. I still can't quite believe I've written it, to be honest with you.
Did it, and it's a beautiful book. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's some questions here. So from Mustafa, do the Twin Trust do patient information leaflet? And the answer is yes. I mean, Bess is here if you want to unmute yourself and talk about sort of resources available in Twin Trust, but certainly yes, there are information leaflets. I certainly have contributed to them. There is information leaflet about TAPS, or twin immune sequence, and TTS, and various conditions that can affect identical twins or twins who share one placenta. Best you want to say something about where to find them, where to access them. Do you want sort of people, particularly organizations, where they maybe want to order some of the leaflets to make them available to their patients?
Yeah, thank you, Asma. Yes, we do have an awful lot of information on the website, and we've tried to be really clear in our website in terms of, like Asma said, to the normal person, to the layman, to be able to explain all those medical terms and keep it brief, but keep it concise, and, tell you exactly what's happening. So we do have a lot of information on the website. So typically, hopefully, if you Google, for example, TAPS and Twins Trust, you will get straight, the SEO will take you straight to that page. But what I'll do is I'll put my email address in the box. So if anyone's got anything that they want to get specifically in terms of leaflets, or they want to get leaflets sent out or whatever, I'll put my email address in there and people can contact me and we can sort that out, definitely.
I also, at the back of the book, I've also used the information from Asma and from Twins Trust as well as to what is TAPS and some of the other the things as well. So obviously with the book, you'll get that too. And all the links to Twins Trust TAPS support.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think there are more questions. From Bess, actually. Nichola, what is the main piece of advice you would give to anyone in the early stage of a TAPS diagnosis?
Don't panic. Don't panic. Take every hour, every minute as it comes. Don't think too far ahead. Deal with what you've got in front of you at that particular moment. Your babies are in your tummy and they're there. Take every minute you have with them. Follow the guidance of your surgeons. I mean, hopefully if you've got the TAPS diagnosis, you're in the right, you're within the hands. If you're not feeling you're being well looked after, don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to phone Twins Trust for help. Don't be afraid to look on the TAPS support. I would definitely suggest as a parent, definitely go to Twins Trust, go to TAPS support. Don't just start, which is what I did, because obviously you can be sent on a bit of a goose run and you will find things that you potentially wouldn't want to look at. So go to the reputable, the people that can actually help you. But yeah, as a parent, just take every second, every minute. And again, I'd like to say in neonatal too, my mum had to say to me, I remember getting home from neonatal and all the beeps and all everything. And I said to my mum, I don't know how I can do this, mummy. I was like, how can I go in every day and see all these poorly babies in intensive care around me? They're having operations around me. How can I do this? And she said, baby, talking to me, you are strong, you are brave, and they are your babies. And every minute you've got them, you are going to be there for them and you will be fine. But don't think further than that. And I think that is the thing. Do not think past that.
That's fantastic. Often, sometimes I personally believe that some of the best advice is to get from your own parents, who obviously know you very well, and she clearly knew that you're a very brave person. So on this note, I would like to thank everyone, particularly obviously Nikki, Stephanie, and also Bess representing the Twin Trust, and particularly all people who joined us. I'm conscious of the fact it's end of a long day, and I'm sure you've got your family and want to have your dinner. So thank you so much for joining us and our efforts to improve the awareness of TAPS. And on this note, I would like to just emphasize again that the recording will be available on various social media channels, also the Twin Trust and the TAPS Support Foundation. We'd love to hear from you. And I think there's sort of some email addresses. Please buy the book. It's a really, really nice book. And on this note, I would like to thank everyone and hopefully see you soon, hopefully face to face, Rosenberg.